And Kamala Harris makes history as the first black woman to serve as a major political party's vice president pick. She has a law enforcement background and is now announced Tuesday as Joe Biden's running mate. Again, making history as the first black woman to serve as a major political party VP pick. The Biden campaign said Biden and Harris will deliver remarks on Wednesday in Delaware. This is breaking news. Biden has picked Senator Kamala Harris as his running mate. And we just received information that Biden's website has now been updated to include this. Biden picking Senator Kamala Harris as his running mate. Joe Biden has chosen California Senator Kamala Harris as his running mate, and that is the breaking information as of about 15 minutes ago. Joe Biden named Kamala Harris the running mate on Tuesday, just about 30 minutes ago, making history by selecting the first black woman to compete on a major party's presidential ticket. And Biden, who spent 8 years as President Barack Obama's vice president, has spent months, as you know, weighing in who would fill this same role in his White House. He pledged in March to select a woman as his vice president, easing frustration among Democrats that the presidential race would center on two white men in their 70s. And of course, as you can see, Senator Kamala Harris, running mate for Joe Biden.
Let's look back at some of her 2003 campaign for district attorney. Back in 2002, she began methodically gathering support to run against Hallinan, calling Mark Buell the stepfather of her friend Summer Tompkins Walker and telling him of her intentions. Impressed, they offered to be her finance chair and advised that she would need to raise more than $150,000 to defeat an incumbent, the highest amount ever raised for the position. Harris sought to run a campaign that disrupted negative stereotypes of black women and set up her campaign office in Bayview, the most isolated neighborhood in San Francisco. Running against Hallinan, a defense attorney, Bill Fazio, Harris was the least known candidate, but noted to be whip-smart, hardworking, and well-credentialed. Harris's campaign successfully lobbied the 24-member Central Committee, including U.S. Senator Dianne Feinstein and then House Majority Leader Nancy Pelosi of the statewide Democratic Party, to withhold its influential endorsement from an incumbent. Then in October of 2003, the San Francisco Ethics Commission found that Harris unintentionally violated the city's campaign finance law by exceeding the voluntary $211,000 spending limit in what was thought to be the largest fine to date under the law. The Ethics Commission levied up to $34,000 in penalties and corrective measures and ordered her to buy newspaper ads informing voters about not abiding by the spending cap. Harris accepted full blame, saying leadership isn't about being perfect. Leadership means taking responsibility. Harris spent nearly $625,000, while Hallinan spent just over $285,000, and both advanced to the general election runoff with 33% and 37% of the vote, respectively. Harris won when it was all said and done with 56 to 44% of the vote, becoming California's first African-American district attorney.
And again, Kamala Harris makes history as the first black woman to serve as a major political party's VP pick. The Biden campaign said Biden and Harris will deliver remarks on Wednesday in Wilmington, Delaware. Now, he did email his supporters earlier saying, "I've decided that Kamala Harris is the best person to make me take the fight to Donald Trump and Mike Pence and then to lead this nation starting in January 2021. Biden also tweeted a bit ago. He said, quote, "I have the great honor to announce that I've picked Kamala Harris, a fearless fighter for the little guy and one of the country's finest public servants, as my running mate," end quote. He also added on Twitter, "Back when Kamala was Attorney General, she worked closely with Beau. I watched as they took on the big banks, lifted up working people, and protected women and kids from abuse. I was proud then, and I'm proud now to have her as my partner in this campaign," end quote. Now, this decision again follows months of secret meetings and closely held deliberations. And again, months ago in March, when Biden announced he would be selecting a female vice president, Biden picking Senator Kamala Harris as his running mate.
And let's go a little bit of the background of Harris, Senator Harris, when she was district attorney of San Francisco. This is some of her record. Felony conviction rate. Harris inherited a 50% felony conviction rate from Hallinan when she took over back in 2004. During her tenure, the felony conviction rate rose to 53.2% in 2005 to 65.5% in 2006, the highest in a decade. The felony conviction rate continued to rise, reaching 76% in 2009. Convictions of drug dealers increased from 56% in 2003 to 74% in 2006. Harris was re-elected in 2007 when she ran unopposed. In the summer of 2005, Harris created a unit to tackle environmental crimes. Harris filed charges against a publishing corporation for dumping hazardous printing ink in San Francisco's Bayview neighborhood. 50-gallon buckets of hazardous ink were left overturned and leaking. The corporation and its publishers were charged with unlawful disposal and transportation of a hazardous waste and with depositing of hazardous substances on the road. In the early 2000s, the city and county of San Francisco murder rate per capita drastically outpaced the national average. Within the first 6 months of taking office, Harris cleared 27 of 74 backlogged homicide cases by settling 14 by plea bargain and taking 11 to trial, with 9 convictions and 2 hung juries. She attained an 81% success rate. She took 49 violent crime cases to trial and secured 36 convictions for an 84% success rate. From 2004 to 2006, Harris achieved an 87% conviction rate for homicides and a 90% conviction rate for all felony gun violations. Harris also pushed for higher bail for criminal defendants, including in gun-related crimes, arguing that the historically low bail encouraged outsiders to commit crimes in San Francisco. Some other reform efforts that she was a part of. In 2004, Harris recruited civil rights activist Latifah Simon, the youngest woman to ever receive a MacArthur Fellowship, to create a San Francisco Reentry Division. The flagship program was Back on Track Initiative, a first-of-its-kind reentry program for first-time nonviolent offenders aged 18 to 30. Harris made a campaign pledge never to seek the death penalty as a prosecutor. In April of 2004, San Francisco Police Department officer Isaac Espinizo was shot and killed in the line of duty. 3 days later, Harris announced that she would not seek the death penalty, angering the San Francisco Police Officers Association. And during the officer's funeral at St. Mary's Cathedral, former mayor of San Francisco, U.S. Senator Dianne Feinstein, rose to the pulpit and called on Harris, seated in the front pew, to seek the death penalty. This surprise move prompted a standing ovation from the 2,000 uniformed police officers in attendance. The association president, Gary DeLanges, echoed her call and demanded that the officer's killer pay the ultimate Price. And we continue to talk a little bit about the history of Senator Harris and her rise now to VP candidate.
And again, looking at some of these tweets, the last tweet that Kamala Harris had put out was 3 hours ago. Black women and women of color have been underrepresented, saying that we have the opportunity to change that. Again, Kamala Harris wrote, quote, "Black women and women of color have long been underrepresented in elected office, and in November, we have the opportunity to change that. Let's get to work." In other tweets, Joe Biden tweeted out as well, "I have the great honor to announce that I've picked Kamala Harris, a fearless fighter for the little guy and one of the country's finest public servants, as my running mate." And as you can see, we have that Twitter page up right now. His website also reflecting that Kamala Harris will be his running mate come November 2020. So again, looking at Joe Biden's Twitter page, he wrote, quote, "I have the great honor to announce that I've picked Kamala Harris, a fearless fighter for the little guy and one of the country's finest public servants, as my running mate." He also wrote, quote, "Back when Kamala was Attorney General, she worked closely with Beau. I watched as they took on the big banks, lifted up working people, and protected women and kids from abuse. I was proud then, and I'm proud now to have her as my partner in this campaign." Switching to Kamala Harris, we are still waiting from her on Twitter, but she did write 3 hours ago, quote, "Black women and women of color have long been underrepresented in elected office, and in November we have the opportunity to change that. Let's get to work." Again, for all of you joining us right now, Biden has picked his running mate. That is Senator Kamala Harris. She makes history as the first black woman to serve as a major political party's vice president pick. And a lot of tweets coming out right now about that. And in an email to his supporters this morning, Biden wrote, quote, "I've decided that Kamala Harris is the best person to help me take this fight to Donald Trump and Mike Pence, and then to lead this nation starting in January 2021. Again, Vice President Pence landed in Phoenix this afternoon, and he will be in Phoenix making statements this afternoon. And we'll continue to update you on that. But the big news coming out right now, Biden picking Senator Kamala Harris as his running mate.
And this decision, following months of secret meetings and closely held deliberations, would indicate that the former vice president is setting aside his friction from the primary campaign. Harris memorably drew sharp contrast, if you remember that, when she challenged him on the debate stage over the past resistance to federally mandated desegregation busing. The now presumptive Democratic presidential nominee selection amounts to a vote of confidence in the senator's political ability and her background, and a willingness to move past the bad blood. The decision may have been tipped days earlier when he was photographed with talking points saying of Harris that he does not hold grudges and has great respect for her. The choice also fulfills a commitment the former vice president made in March to name a woman as his running mate. Naming a black woman at a time when issues of racial inequality are front and center also responds to signals from some circles in the party that such a choice could help build bridges with the black community. The timing gives Biden plenty of space now to reintroduce her to voters ahead of next week's scaled-back Democratic National Convention. Biden's naming of the 55-year-old Harris as his running mate comes 13 months after she flattened him on the debate stage in Miami at the first Democratic presidential primary showdown. During the debate, Harris criticized comments by the former vice president, spotlighting his ability to find common ground during the 1970s with segregation senators with whom he disagreed and his opposition decades ago to federally mandated school busing.